Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the FamVestor Podcast. I'm your host, Sonny Burns.
And I'm your co-host, Sunmarie Burns.
And today on the show, we are talking about books. Books, and the life-changing effect they have on you if you allow them to.
Right.
But before we get into that, we are going to share a little bit about our week. Pretty good week. We've had good sunny weather here in North Jersey, so we took advantage of that. We went camping, whole fam, a little backpacking, just a mile into the woods. We love to go to Harriman State Park, just across the border in New York State. No reservation, just go there and camp out. So we did that.
Really fun. It was a very clear night, and you guys saw a shooting star.
We saw a shooting star.
Which was an objective. You wanted
was.
to see shooting stars, so.
Yeah. This weekend, November 13th, I believe, is supposed to be another shooting star thing.
Meteor shower.
So we might be going out again. And then we did one of our favorite hikes at the Delaware Water Gap, Mount Tamamany.
Yeah.
I still don't know how to say that, but it's a very hard one. But I was impressed with the boys. They did the whole thing.
Yeah, quite a bit of it
the whole
is like
way, but
rock scrambling, right?
Yeah, it's a challenging, very steep ascent and descent, but a good time for sure.
Great views from the top.
Mm-hmm. And then today we did some acro yoga. I've been trying to get more into this, but Sunmarie and I have done a little bit. But I did it with the kids this morning, and that went really well because they're light, so we could do some cool stuff. I'll in the show notes I'll put some acro yoga pictures because they're pretty cool.
Yeah, Valen was really getting into it. It's like balancing, kind of acrobatic style.
Yeah.
Pretty cool.
Yeah. I guess that's it. Today also we did a run in the morning. I was gonna go out for a run and the boys woke up before I went. Then I asked if they wanted to go with me, and I took one of those jogging strollers that we have, and they alternated running alongside me and getting in the jogging stroller. So one boy was always running and one boy was getting pushed, and they did a good job. We probably ran like a total of like a mile and a half, and they were doing it the whole time. It took 20 minutes, so
I was impressed.
Pace.
I saw them leave, and I figured either they'd quit before they got to their destination or they'd take a really long time, and they didn't do either. So I was impressed.
And they relayed off each other. I mean, 3 and 5 years old, pretty good.
Yeah.
I was impressed. Yeah. I mean, we could probably do like a 5K, honestly, with the stroller. Yeah, maybe that's something to do, something to look forward to.
Yeah, see? We got an idea just from doing this podcast now.
Yes. So that was a mishmash of our week. Hope you guys can think about something. Do the acro yoga if you're fit enough as a parent. Do that with your child. That was a lot of fun, and something cool bonding experience that I want to keep developing. So without further ado, let's talk about books. And really exciting this week, we have our first sponsorship from Audible. So go to famvestor.com/audible and you can pick up 2 free audiobooks when you sign up for a free 30-day Audible trial. So sign up at famvestor.com/audible and get started listening to some great content. Without further ado, let's get to the show.
You're listening to the FamVestor Podcast. If you're looking to raise your family with intention, gain financial independence, and live a life of true freedom, you're in the right place. Join us as we explore together how to create thriving families, because strong families are the cornerstone for a world at peace.
Welcome back, everyone. So today we're talking about books, their life-changing effect. And I want to lump podcasts into this because podcasts have really changed my life with all the new information that I would have never thought about that I got from podcasts. And I think the real reason that books have had such a positive effect on me is because I allow them to. There's this quote, I'm sure many of you have heard it. You are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with, right? And that means it's usually equates to like who you surround yourself with, your coworkers, your friends, your schoolmates. If they're downers, then maybe you're a downer. If they're high achievers, then maybe you're a high achiever. But, when it comes to, I guess self-improvement books especially, I feel like books also go into that category. If you surround yourself with good books, good podcasts that are uplifting, that teach you new skills, It's the same thing. You are the average of, the books you are reading and spending the most time listening to. And I really feel like that's shaped my world.
I like that analogy. I like likening books to the influential people in your life, because I really do think that that is a relevant point. Sometimes we have curiosities and interests in learning new things, but we don't know anybody around us who might be engaged in those things. But that doesn't mean that you don't ever have the opportunity, because there is an abundance of resources out there you can tap into. If you just pick 5 books on the topic, you'll become quite skilled.
Right.
And you'll at least know enough of where to launch yourself from that point to learn more.
Right. Like, for instance, us getting into real estate investing. We had no friends that were into real estate investing. We didn't even know real estate investing was a thing until,
If anything, we just had people telling us not to do it.
Right. Because they had no idea either. We weren't in that network. We didn't have those 5 friends that we were surrounded. Now we do, and it helps so much. But back then, when I didn't have a mentor, these books about real estate investing, this podcast about real estate investing, I stumbled on the Bigger Pockets podcast, and just listening every episode, I felt like I was making a new friend. I was listening to their story of how they got started in real estate investing. And, each episode I'm surrounding myself with another investor I just listened to, another investor I just listened to. And that gave me, and then eventually you and us, the confidence to start investing in real estate and, buy 1 property, 2nd property, 3rd property. Now we're on our 4th property. And, that was just 8 years ago. I started listening to that podcast, and that changed my life. Right. By surrounding myself with the content, with those books. I read other books on real estate investing too.
Yeah, and so it can be something that can shape your professional life, but also your personal life and your character. I feel like books are huge influencers on teaching you, good character building life skills. There's a lot of them out there that in subtle ways might influence how you think and how you view the world. So picking a good book makes all the difference too, finding ones that are actually going to benefit you in life, teach you life lessons that you want to be learning.
So a lot of you might be wondering, where do you find the time to read books? And yeah, that's definitely a valid question. You look at this 1,000-page volume and you're like, I'm never going to have time to read that. And maybe you found yourself in the past buying books and they just stack up on the shelf somewhere.
They look real pretty on your shelf. I have a bunch of those.
Right. But so for me, what really works is audiobooks, while I'm commuting in the car, not doing that during Corona, but when I'm running, I'm listening to an audiobook. And I used to listen when I was commuting. If I'm bicycling or anything like that, cleaning the house, doing dishes, a lot of times I'll turn on a podcast or audiobook and start listening that way. I love the flexibility of audiobooks because, I can multitask. If it's a monotonous activity like gardening or something like that, mowing the lawn, it's very easy for me to be engaged in a book and, developing my mind. And sometimes I'm just enjoying fiction books too. I love fiction, but a lot of times it's also self-help. It's a good, uplifting podcast that I listen to.
Yeah, I think you're completely right. Audiobooks are a wonderful way to read books and gain knowledge. They don't quite beat reading a hardcover book, though. I gotta say, there's something about having the text in your hand and actually reading it rather than listening to it that just kind of creates a different level of understanding. I love having a book in my hands, and there's been many years have gone by where I have not touched a book, and I have not opened one with the excuse of my life is too busy, I'm a mom, I simply don't have time to sit down and read a book. But the interesting thing we discovered actually just this past spring was that is not true. Everybody has time to read a good old-fashioned book. It's just being disciplined and actually carving out the time. And we were doing this challenge, fitness challenge, and strength training challenge called 75 Hard. And one of the criteria in it was to read a book every single day for 75 days straight and read 10 pages in it. And we did it, and it was amazing. Just in reading 10 pages, it doesn't sound like that much.
10 pages a day.
It doesn't sound like that much. It was pretty easy to squeeze that into our day. Actually, I would say that was one of the easiest things we had to do in that challenge.
We always left it till the end, right before we went to sleep. And sometimes, it would involve two 45-minute workouts a day. So sometimes that last activity of reading those 10 pages, we were dead tired. 1 a.m. in the morning, reading, falling asleep, reading. Oh, we got to read. But no, we gained a lot from that, and we finished, I think, 2 or 3 books.
It was so impressive how many books we got through during 75 days.
10 pages a day, in a week, that's 70 pages. So you're blowing through books, and you think 10 pages is insignificant, but yeah, it really stacks. That disciplined, continuous action. So
if you have a desire to read that book that's just been staring at you on the shelf for all these years, just tell yourself, I'm only going to do 10 pages a day. And I mean, I'd say that roughly takes you about 20 minutes, give or take, depending on the size of the text and the readability of it. But we found it really enlightening to discover, actually, despite our busy lives, we do have time to read books. So whichever way you choose to obtain your knowledge, whether it is through reading a hard copy or listening to an audiobook or podcast for that matter, even sometimes magazines and so forth, the important thing is actually doing it, finding the time to include this in your lifestyle, because it will help you grow immensely. I see it helping Sunny grow immensely. I definitely enjoy fiction more than I enjoy nonfiction, but I've been getting into both as well. Self-improvement books are actually really inspiring sometimes, and they get you asking the questions and challenging yourself, and through challenging yourself, you become better and you grow more. So that's been a pretty awesome thing.
And if you don't have books sitting on your shelf, then I am going to list the 8 books, that I have seen have the most massive impact on my life. And hopefully one of them will sound good and inspire you to, read something. So, first book, Ender's Game. This is my favorite fiction book. Not just a great read. I feel like it made me smarter as a person. It talks about leadership skills, strategy, and thinking critically. And I don't know. It's a very enjoyable read. You pick it up and you just get right into it. I think, if you listen to an audiobook, it's like a 5-hour audiobook. So you can get through it pretty quickly. And it's a science fiction book. And my favorite sci-fi for sure. Possibly my favorite fiction book.
Yeah, I remember when we first were getting to know each other, one of the things we did was swap book suggestions and take turn reading each other's favorite books. So I read Ender's Game and you read Pride and Prejudice. And Ender's Game definitely would have been a book I never would have picked up ever in my lifetime. It's just not my genre. I'm not sci-fi or whatnot. But I did enjoy it. And it was broadening for my mind to read the book, and I'm definitely glad I read it.
And if you watched the movie and hated it, read the book, because it's 100,000 times better. The movie was terrible, but the book is great.
So on the topic of our favorite fiction books, my favorite fiction book of all time is Pride and Prejudice, which I just mentioned before, and I put this poor guy through reading that very long book, which, by the way, is one of the few in my lifetime I've actually read multiple times. I have probably read that book like 4 times over because I like it that much. And he read it and was like, oh my gosh, this is torture. So to each his own, but that was definitely my favorite book. I love reading period pieces. I love that era. I love Jane Austen. She's an incredible writer. And her characters are really fun and quirky and interesting. So for me, that was a formative book for me growing up, to learn how to be a proper lady. I took it very seriously. And I'd say I'm doing pretty good.
Nice.
Yes.
Cool. And well, what you were saying just brought up a random thought. For those parents who are listening, getting your kids into books, I think is so important. Our kids love reading their bedtime stories. Usually read 1 book for each child, so that's 2 books a night. They each get to pick one, And, when the libraries were easier to visit, we'd go to the library every single week. We'd take out like 20 books at a time, because we'd go through 20 books a week. It'd be engaging for me because we were reading new content. The kids, they can read over and over and over again. Me, I love reading new stuff to them. So I'd love going to the library and taking, an armful of books, and then returning in the following week and getting a new refreshed list the next following week.
Yeah, if you don't utilize your library, you are really missing out. You don't need to buy brand new books every time you're bored of the ones you have. The library is such a cool resource, and a lot of libraries do inter-county exchanges, so you can order from books from all over.
You find a series you like, and your library only has one, you can go reach out to the other libraries and get the rest of the series.
Right. We have been loving our library, and our kids are just gobbling up the books, which is a wonderful thing to see. And, their vocabulary has really skyrocketed. And I attribute a lot of that to just simply being read to and hearing good stories. So great for your child's brain development.
Also, on the topic of libraries and books and audiobooks, our library gives us access to like this digital collection of audiobooks through Hoopla or Libby app. These are two apps, and they have like a huge cloud of free books to rent, and we get access to 10 audiobooks a month, or 10 books a month, for our library card. So Sunray gets 10, I get 10, and Valen, our eldest child, 5 years old, has been loving the Boxcar Children audiobook series. They're about like 2 hours long each, and they're very wholesome, very holistic, and he loves listening to them. Actually, since he takes a little longer to go to sleep than the little one, we usually play an audiobook for him at the very end of the day, and he'll listen for the last 30 minutes before he goes to sleep, and that keeps him calm and lets the his bunkmate who sleeps below him, Alvin, the 3-year-old, go to sleep without him creating a ruckus, because he's intently listening and quietly lying in his bed, and lets him calm down. So that's been a good activity and a great tip for any book lovers that your kids may be. Get free access every month, 10 books, and he'll use it. He'll go through 10 Boxcar Children a month.
Yeah. So we digress, but on to our list. Our second favorite book that we want to mention of the 8 books that changed our life is The Way of the Peaceful Warrior by Dan Millman.
Yeah, I feel like this is like the first self-help book I ever read before I knew what self-help books were. And it was really impactful for me, just the life philosophy the book presents, and how, it's always teaching you to try to live in the present moment, stop living out in the future, in goal and dreamland, and in the past of regret and things you wish you would have changed, but just live here in the now, when you can affect change, when you can affect your life. And just the whole journey, it's kind of written as like a memoir almost of his life, but there's like these surreal experiences, and I just really enjoyed that book. It's
a very easy read. It's almost like reading a novel. So if you're not, if you cringe at the thought of like a self-help book, it's not that rigid. It's a really entertaining book to read, and it's got some really profound insights.
Right. And that one was actually made into a movie, and I enjoyed that movie. I thought that movie was a pretty good representation and did a fairly good job of the book. So the third book is a nonfiction book called Born to Run. I love this book because it also has a bunch of stories thrown in there, and just really entertaining, really easy to read. And I feel like this book significantly changed the way I viewed my body and its potential. And, it just kind of gives you the idea that your body was created and designed to be able to fulfill everything it needs. It doesn't need all these accessories, these, super fancy shoes to be able to run. It talks about, just how your body evolved over millions of years to be the perfect thing, the perfect
running machine,
foot suspension system. And just not even just running, it got me to think about everything. What did cavemen do when they didn't have toothbrushes or diapers? It got me to think about this thing called elimination control, EC, where you communicate with your baby, so you don't need a diaper. You follow these little cues that say, oh, the baby's about to poop. Let me put the baby in a comfortable position to poop without having diapers. We as Americans go through hundreds or thousands of diapers per child. And you've got to think, cavemen didn't have diapers. How do they deal with this?
Yeah, it talks a lot about Mexican runners and
running barefoot.
They're barefoot runners.
Hundreds of miles
right.
at a time.
And just sort of the cultural differences in how we view running. I feel like a lot of times in American culture, we sort of think that we need these man-made, created assistance from shoes and from, insoles, or it isn't even just related to running. It spills over to other areas of your life, that you think you need an extra help in order to do something that actually naturally you are capable of fulfilling simply by being who you are. So it is pretty insightful in that regard, fascinating. You had me read it because you wanted me to start running barefoot, and I thought you were crazy. But I learned a lot too, and I learned to respect our, the wonder of our physical bodies and what they're capable of being able to do. It's a pretty cool book. I definitely recommend it.
Yeah, if you go to that blog post, fanvestor.com/books, I have my favorite quotes from that book. A lot of really great stuff. Yeah, one particular story, I guess, that I love from the book, it talks about primitive hunters and how primitive hunters, a lot of this book is about distance running and all like the pain that modern day runners experience trying to like run marathons and these crippling pains that they go through, and how like, hey, where did this pain all come from? And it talks about, these primitive hunters who would outrun antelope. Antelope are super fast creatures that, leopards and cheetahs can't even catch or whatever, things like that. But they would outdistance them. It would talk about, the human body being made to run these long distances. And, sure, the antelope wins in a sprint, but when, over time, after an hour or two of running down this antelope and it sprints, and you're just constantly jogging behind it, it doesn't have the same sweat glands. It doesn't have the same ability to cool off. And I just thought it was so cool that, you can just run it down and then eventually it's just so tired that it just stops running. And that's how, primitive hunters used to catch their prey. And I don't know, just so many cool stories like that and so many things that get you to think about the potential of the human body and how we've evolved. Mm-hmm. Anyway, that was a deep segue, but we're going to move on to the fourth book on this show. Sunri, why don't you introduce it?
So fourth book is called Stargirl. It's by Jerry Spinelli. It is a fiction book. It's a fun book, kind of, I would say, a teens book.
Yeah.
Yeah. A good book for teens, a coming of age kind of book, high school. Really cute. But it's about this really quirky girl who starts going to this school, and
she was homeschooled.
She
doesn't live by the normal status quo terms and kind of lives her own life.
Yeah, she's very quirky, very confident, and she
doesn't try to fit in.
Right, doesn't try to fit in, and does, one thing I really love about it, she does these random acts of kindness that are, she never lets the person know that she does it.
Like putting quarters in payphone change machines so little kids who look for quarters in payphone change dispensers like myself and you, I believe, find them and become happy, or
right.
Look in the classifieds for people wanting things like a porcupine necktie and delivering that necktie to them anonymously.
Right, and just the idea that giving to someone without expecting a thanks in return makes it all that more special, both for you as the giver and as well for the person receiving the anonymous act of kindness, knowing that someone out there in the world is watching out for you. So a really sweet book, very uplifting, really gets you thinking about, be proud of who you are. You don't need to be like everybody else and fit in, to some clique that you think you might belong to, but just, be you, be proud of who you are, and be proud of the unique gifts that you've been given as an individual.
Yep. Ooh. So, moving on to our fifth book on the list is The Five Love Languages. So, this is definitely a self-help book. It's a relationship marriage book, and something, that's been very transformative in our own relationship. That's, been a guiding principle, I guess, in our relationship. And we're reading it right now, actually. We read it every single year. So, we've read it like 8 times now, but it's just that powerful. And it's about 4 hours on audiobook, so very quick, and so many stories too, so it's very easy read. Why don't you give us a breakdown what the 5 love languages are?
Yeah, so the book's basic premise is that there are 5 ways in which people feel or experience love. Not everybody experiences love in the same way, and so to truly love your partner or your spouse is to truly know what their love language is and then learn how to speak that language. So the 5 love languages are words of affirmation, physical touch, acts of service, quality time, and gifts. So those are the 5 ways that the author, Gary Chapman, says most people experience the feeling of being loved or cared for. And he was saying, sometimes you can make a lot of effort loving your spouse in the language that you appreciate, but it may not be the way that they receive love. If you shower them with compliments and tell them how beautiful they are, but they are a gifts person, then they won't really feel loved by the words, because they'll feel loved, but not
that's
as
nice, blah blah blah. But you get them a nice shiny necklace, and oh, he really loves me, because that's their love language, and that's how they know, or that's how they respond.
They're more, or if it's like acts of service, some people feel loved when you wash the dishes for them, or vacuum the car, or do something like that, or perhaps they are a quality time person. And all that
stop
they
washing
really
the
want,
dishes and just sit on the couch with me.
Just sit with me. The house work can wait. Just sit down and let's just spend time together and talk to each other and go on a walk together. So the idea is that, sometimes in relationships, people struggle because they don't really understand how one another experiences love most profoundly. So we really loved it. It comes with like a self-assessment where you can take the test to find out what your love language is, your primary love language and your secondary one, because usually people have 2 that they gravitate more to over the other 3. And when you find that out about yourself and you find that out about your partner, you can better understand how to love them, and they can learn how to love you better in the way that you receive love and care. So we love that book, read it every year, recommend it to everyone we know. We really think it's a wonderful book. And I gotta say, with the audiobook version, I believe Gary Chapman narrates it himself. The author narrates himself.
Does a good job too.
He does a great job, and he has such a soothing voice. He's just such a nice person to listen to on the audio recording. So I really do enjoy listening to the audiobook. And it's just very simple. Whenever we're driving around, we just make sure to give it a listen.
The 6th book is The 4-Hour Work Week, and this was very instrumental for me when I started in the corporate workspace, as a mechanical engineer, because it really teaches you about being super productive and using the most, maximizing the time you allocate to things. It's about kind of almost leaving your job, actually, but I really felt like it helped me be highly valued in my job and confident in doing a good job, actually. So it's kind of interesting, but yeah, it talks about moving away from a 40-hour work week, which is the standard, and kind of it questions the idea, why does everyone have to work 40 hours a week? A chef is completely different than a project engineer, who can be completely different than a teacher, and everyone seems to be working 40-hour work weeks. But it talks about, eventually escaping the daily 9-to-5 grind and going to, start your own entrepreneurial endeavor, and how to kind of do it on the side as like a side hustle. So you don't have to quit your main income stream until you get a side income up and running, and then you can invest full time into it. And how to make it super productive, so that you're not spending 40 hours a week on it. You're not even spending 20/10. It says, the idea is, you systematize it so you're really only spending 4 hours a week maintaining this this entrepreneurial vehicle you create, and that can sustain any lifestyle that you want with very minimal input.
Yeah, really, really insightful on time management and productivity and maximizing what you do with your time.
Yeah, no, I thought it was a great book.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do have some qualms with Tim Ferriss. I feel like he is kind of... Anyway, he did a good job with the book. So, 7th book is Outwitting the Devil. I'm not going to go into it, but it's a nice self-help book that kind of talks about 7 principles to attain spiritual, mental, and physical freedom. It's a good book. I really liked it. But it's like many other self-help books I've read, but that one particularly stood out to me at that time. The 9th one, or 8th one,
book
is Millionaire Next Door. And this one was probably one of my first personal finance books I read. This and The Richest Man in Babylon are one of my favorite personal finance books, and it really taught me a lot about like offensive and defensive finances and what millionaires really look like. You know, they're not these people who are driving these fancy cars and living in mansions. A lot of them are just, you know, regular people who invested heavily into their Roth IRAs and 401ks and aren't lavish spenders, but really frugal and buy reliable things, not fancy things, and don't go on shopping sprees, but are really intentional about their spending decisions. So Millionaire Next Door is definitely one you should absolutely read if you haven't yet. Our last book on this list is The 6-Point Plan for Happy, Healthy Children, and that's one that we read prior to having children and really liked and really enjoyed John Roseman's philosophy on parenting. And it's kind of more old school, where it's not talking about child-led parenting. It's talking about, you know, being a strong parent, being a benevolent dictator, as he likes to call parents. You know, making sure
you're setting proper parameters and limits for your kids so that they can feel safe and secure in knowing what your expectations are, what they can and can't expect in the household. You know, leads to a more secure, happy, and confident child. So we really enjoyed that. We've read a bunch of different parenting books over the years, you know, spanning the spectrum of all sorts of different parenting styles. But this book definitely resonated with us. We did enjoy it quite a bit. So highly recommend that for parents out there who are looking for a good read, or couples who are thinking about perhaps becoming parents and how to go about doing that. We enjoyed this one and the advice that it had to give.
Yeah, so I hope you guys enjoyed that list. I hope it gave you some thoughts about what your next read might be. And I hope you take that action after listening to this show to pick up a book. You know, maybe just download the Audible app. You get 2 free listens and listen to an audiobook, or, you know, read one of those old books that you put on your shelf a long time ago, and now make some time to intentionally read 10 pages a day.
Yeah. We gave you podcasts on 8 books and told you about 9, but definitely highly recommended. Just jump into a good book and you'll gain so much from it.
So I hope you really take that action to, you know, start reading a book, you know, whether it's that physical book and just reading the 10 pages tonight, or maybe, downloading the Audible app. I love Audible. We actually partner with them. So if you go to fanbuster.com/audible, we have a deal where if you sign up through that link, you get a free 30-day trial and you get access to 2 free audiobooks with that link. So any audiobook in the world, whatever book you want, you know, it could be one of these 8 books or whatever you want to listen to. So just go to fanbuster.com/audible and you get 2 free audiobooks. So with that, I hope you have happy listenings. Godspeed.